as you know, I run Empowered STEM. Empowered STEM is an A-level course provider. We provide A-level courses in chemistry, biology, physics, and maths for those students that want to enroll in medical, dental, veterinary, financial, and engineering programs at the chosen university in the UK. So today, I wanted to come in today and I wanted to talk about this one: how to help your teen focus on their journey and not others. So parents, is your teen one of these teens that compares themselves to everybody else in the class? Are they the one that compares themselves to the one person that just seems to get it like this, or always seems to get the top marks in the class, or they have uni offers and your teen doesn't? The issue with this is that comparison kills progress. And so in this video, what I'll do is I'll show you how you can stop your teen from comparing themselves to others, get them to focus on their journey, and unlock the mindset that top performing students who get the A and the A star always have. So this is a problem then when it comes to comparison, the constant comparison trap. Let's start with this one. Your teen is bombarded by comparisons. If they're on social media, if they're on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all they see in social media is other students posting how well they're doing in life. Maybe they're talking about the school that they got into, the school ranking of the chosen university, or maybe they're talking about how well they're doing in the class or other aspects of the personal lives, the typical peer pressure. But maybe they're also talking about predicted grades. And what your teen is trapped into is this comparison trap where everybody seems to be doing better than they do. Oh, I didn't like that, than they did. All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Graham Matthews. And as you know, I run Empowered STEM. Empowered STEM is an A-level course provider. We provide A-level courses in biology, chemistry, physics, and maths for those students that want to enroll in medical, dental, veterinary, financial, and engineering programs at the top universities in the UK. So I wanted to come in this live stream today, and I wanted to talk about this one. Parents, how you can help your teen focus on their journey and not others. Because maybe your teen is one of these teens that always compares themselves to other teens in the class. Maybe they compare themselves to that teen that always just seems to get it first time through, very quick learner. Or maybe the other teen that always just seems to get the top marks. Or maybe they're talking about university offers and other teens are going to more prestigious universities who've got better offers of study. The issue with this one, parents, is that comparison kills progress. In this video, what I'll do is I'll show you how you can stop your teen from comparing themselves to others, help them focus on their journey, and unlock the mindset of top performing students. Now, first thing we have to talk about is the comparison trap. The problem with the comparison trap is that your teen is stuck into it in this modern day and age, because if they're on social media, you can't help but compare yourselves to other people. You know how it is, parents. Maybe you've done it yourselves. You're doom scrolling late at night, and you notice how actors and actresses just seem to be doing so well, or there's that businessman or businesswoman, and oh, they're driving a nice car, and you're thinking, I'm comparing myself to other people. Maybe you're involved in the local social media group, and other people just seem to be posting holiday snaps or comments about the area of town they live in. And so you're always comparing yourselves to others. Well, it's the same thing with your teen. But in your teen's world, they're not comparing themselves to what car they're driving or what house they live in or what area of the neighborhood they live in. What they're looking at is they're looking at students who post the school rankings of the school, the university that they got the offer into. Or maybe they're talking about where they went on holiday. It's a bit of peer pressure. Or maybe they're talking about predicted grades. So they've done very well in A-level chemistry and they've got an A-star prediction. Now, the problem with the comparison trap, parents, is this, is that it's a trap that spirals downwards into anxiety, perfectionism, and imposter syndrome. And your teen can very easily be caught into this because all of a sudden they become anxious. They're not doing as well as what they perceive other people to be doing, other students in the class. They're not getting the top grades, and so they get into the perfectionism trap. Or maybe they're just stuck in the imposter syndrome, the one where they don't feel like they're really good enough to earn it, that they're just faking it until they make it. Now, the issue with this is when your teen compares themselves to other teens, what they do is that they stop measuring progress and they start measuring worth. Let me say this one again. They stop measuring progress, how much progress they're making in A-level chemistry, for example, or biology or physics or maths. And then they start measuring the self-worth. Like, oh, maybe I'm not smart enough to do A-level maths or A-level science. Why is it that I don't get it the first time through? Why is it that I have to put an extra F to do it? Okay. And if your teen if they fall into this trap of measuring self-worth and not measuring progress, they start to lose confidence and they start to lose focus. Now, the confidence and focus one we talked about in the previous live stream. Okay. Confidence, focus, motivation, they're all linked in together in a little circle. And so once you start to lose confidence, you start to believe that you can't do it, you start to lose focus. You start to lose focus, you start to lose motivation. And then just like when we talked about motivation and confidence and beliefs, you start to spiral downwards. Now, parents, what exactly can you do to help your teen? So, well, Graham, I mean, what you painted is a picture that, quite honestly, is how my teen is. And I guess it's how all teens are in this modern day and age of social media and easy access to the internet on the phones. Well, what exactly can you do to help your teen not fall into the confidence trap? Well, let's look at it this way. Let's look at it as what you shouldn't be doing. Right. What you shouldn't be doing is comparing your teen to the friends. You shouldn't be doing it. Okay. Now, it's very easy, parents, for you to fall into this trap because you mean well. And you think, well, it's a bit of motivation, Graham. What I'm saying is, well, look at so-and-so. They're in your class and they're doing very well in A-level chemistry or biology or physics or maths. And you go in there with the best of intentions, don't you? You go in there with the intention of, well, all I'm trying to do, Graham, is just motivate them because if their friend can do it and they all got the same grade at GCSE, well, then my son, my daughter should be able to do it as well. But although you mean well, the problem with comparison is that it doesn't create motivation, it creates paralysis. Let me say that again. The problem with comparison is that it doesn't create motivation. They've done studies. Look, comparing your teen to other teens out there is not going to motivate them, and it's not going to all of a sudden make them into the A-star student that you want them to be. You know deep down they can earn that grade. You mean well, parents, but the problem is it's not the right path to take them down. What it does is it leads them into a sense of paralysis, because now they start double checking everything. Well, do I have the right study plan? Do I have the right revision schedule? Am I doing this right? Am I putting in enough hours each week? Why is it that my friend can do it, get the top grade, the high predicted grade so easily, and I can't? What is wrong with me? They're still stuck in the comparison trap. So what you need to understand, parents, is that you do need to have a paradigm shift on how you think about how to motivate your teen. Because again, parents, I know that you mean well. I do. But if we're talking about focus, we're talking about motivation, there's a science behind it. Now, of course, parents, you have to say, go on, Graham. Well, tell me about the science of focus and motivation, because every time we come onto a live stream, I've got to admit, you always seem to have some study. You always seem to have some science. You always seem to have some academic research behind what you say. It's not your personal opinion. It's the fact. Well, it's this. If you look at what happens in the brain chemistry when you're looking at somebody who is stuck in the comparison trap. They're stuck in the comparison trap. They're comparing themselves to their friends. They got parents that are saying to them, why aren't you like your friends? Why don't you study as hard as they do? Why don't you put in the time, effort, and attention? Why aren't you getting the grades? They are stuck in the comparison trap. And what's happening is that they're not measuring progress. They're now starting to measure self-worth. Well, from the brain chemistry point of view, parents, what happens is that your teen gets stressed out. When your teen gets stressed out, you start to produce the stress hormone cortisol. And cortisol, it affects everything. The very first thing is you start to produce cortisol. The second thing is you start to shut down the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which means, in plain English, what happens is that you see a decrease in focus, creativity, and problem-solving ability. Now, parents, you've got to stop and ask yourself, if your teen has a decrease in focus, creativity, and problem-solving ability, do you think that possibly that is going to affect the way that your teen studies and revises for A-level chemistry, biology, physics, or maths? Of course it is. A-levels are hard subjects to begin with. And so if they're stressed because you've helped them into the comparison trap, when you're keeping them in the comparison trap, they get a high level of cortisol, the stress hormone. The prefrontal cortex starts to shut down, and all of a sudden they can't focus. Am I working on this? Am I working on that? They can't focus. The creativity begins to decrease. So applying the 6 rules of neuroscience, which is what we teach, again, all of a sudden becomes a bit more difficult because, well, you're not in that creative frame of mind. And problem-solving ability, well, parents, you know that the exams are all geared to application questions, don't you? And so you have to be able to apply the knowledge to novel situations you've never seen before. Now, this is what happens if your teen is stuck in the comparison trap. Well, what happens if they're not stuck in the comparison trap? Let's say that they're motivated, they're focused, they've got the confidence, like we talked about in the previous live stream. Well, rather than have an increase in cortisol, what happens is that you have an increase in dopamine. Dopamine, which is the feel-good hormone, okay? And if you have an increase in dopamine, what happens is that you start to believe that you can do it because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that spirals upwards. We talked about this in the previous live stream. It's this one. An increase in dopamine when you get something right, it's a reward for getting something right. You then start to associate the dopamine release with the belief that you can do it, which means that you spiral upwards. Your confidence and your motivation increases. And this is the reason why students who are in the zone, as in confidence, motivation, and focus, they set themselves internal goals and they start tracking their own progress. So what becomes important is this, is that we need your team to be in the zone. We call it the zone of excellence, where they're confident, focused, and motivated, and not in the comparison trap. And once they're in that zone of excellence, what happens is this, is that they can set internal benchmarks instead of external ones. And so the motivation becomes self-fulfilling. So what I mean by internal versus external benchmarks, an internal benchmark would be something like, this week I'm going to study A-level chemistry for 60 minutes every day as soon as I get in from school. This is an internal benchmark. And when I do it, I'm going to put a little check in the checkbox on the study plan on the fridge so I can see it. And I'm going to get the dopamine release, and then I'll feel good about doing it because I've achieved something. I have achieved something that I've set myself as an improvement for myself, as compared to an external one, which is, well, my friend got an A star on the last paper that they took. That's what I've got to do. I've got to keep up with my friend, don't I? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to be as good as my friend. And then, of course, if they don't get the A star, what happens? Oh, well, then all of a sudden they fall back into the comparison trap. They start to spiral downwards. They start to measure the self-worth and not self-progress. So parents, how exactly then can you shift from comparison, the comparison trap, to growth, keeping your team in the zone of excellence? Well, first one is this. First one is you need to reframe what they do every day. Okay, so ask, what did you learn at school today? Open-ended question, because parents, look, you and I both know teenagers, they can sometimes be very, very quiet, monosyllabic. So don't ask them questions which can be answered in a yes-no format. So did you learn something at school today? Yes. Well, that's the end of that conversation. What you could ask is, what did you learn in A-level chemistry today? Or what did you learn this week in A-level biology? All right. Not, how is it going in A-level maths? Because if you ask, how is it going in A-level maths, that then becomes a judgment. Whereas, what did you learn is a behavior. Don't compare them to others. Don't say, well, how did you do in A-level biology on that test? Got to say, oh, what did your friends get? Well, they got an A and a B. Oh, I see. Why do you think that you didn't get the A or the B? Right? Because what you're doing is that you are comparing them to someone else. Now, something else you need to keep in mind is this, is that you need to have a rethink, parents, about what your definition of success is, right? Success, and this is what we teach at Empowered STEM, by the way, success is not all about grades. That is the end goal. All right. Success is how you progress along the journey. Meaning, success is a measurement of effort, growth, and understanding. How much effort is your team putting into their studies in A-level chemistry? How is the understanding of the subject coming along? Do you see them growing as a A-level chemist? Are they getting stronger and better each week, each month as they progress through the course? Number 2, track personal progress. Help them track personal progress. How are they doing? Now, in our courses at Empowered STEM, it's built in, it's baked into the courses, is that they get a progress tracker so they can say, this is how I did on the topic in week 1. This is how I did on the homework in week 1. This is how I did on this exam. And then, oh, look, I got this on this homework set, and I got this grade on this exam. And then in week 2, oh, look, I've got higher grade in homework. I got stronger feedback from the course tutor. Oh, okay. And my grade's going up. I've also managed to attend all the live lessons. I've also managed to put in my hours of study that I said that I would. So in other words, the tracking personal progress, because it's going back to the internal benchmarks. They are setting their own internal benchmarks, which they are measuring as internal progress. They are not setting themselves, they aren't comparing themselves to external benchmarks and external progress that somebody else is making. And so they have autonomy over their study and over the learning, and they can see improvement over time. Now, something else we teach is this, is that you don't compare yourselves to others, you compare yourself to your past version of yourself. Now, this one's deep, parents. You don't compare yourself to others. Because we teach us this. Look, the A star is at the top of the mountain. Everybody is going up the side of the mountain on their own little path. Everyone's path is going to be different. And so you don't compare yourselves to others. How are they doing? Oh, are they getting higher grades than me on the exams? No. What you do is that you compare yourself to the past version of yourself. I said, well, when I started in the very first week, this is the understanding that I had of A-level chemistry. And this is the grade that I was getting on the homework and the mock exams. And now, well, I'm in month 2. Look at those grades now. They're beginning to move upwards. Look at those mock exam grades. Look at the homework grades. They're beginning to trend upwards. And I feel more confident and secure in my understanding of the knowledge of A-level chemistry than I did in the previous month. Now, something else, parents, you can do is this, is that you can help celebrate the process, not the prize. Again, it's the journey that your teen is on to the A star, climbing up the mountain, not the A star at the end of it. Because what you need to do in order to encourage them, in order to motivate them, is reward them for things that they have control over, that are intrinsic to themselves. Meaning, you can praise habits. You know, son, daughter, I'm really proud of you because you said at the beginning of the week you would put in 7 hours of study outside of your class time for A-level chemistry. And you have the habit that when you come in, get a quick snack, something to drink, get changed at the desk, you put in an hour of work before dinner's ready. Celebrate, praise consistency. Because what you need is your teen to be consistent in what they do. And so you need to praise when they keep going back to the desk. And if it's A-level chemistry one day and A-level biology the next day and A-level maths, like whatever the sequence is, all right, then they are consistent in their study. Are they putting in 2 or 3 hours of study every night? Right. Consistency. Resilience is a big one. Now, we've talked about this in a previous live stream. Resilience, Carol Dweck calls it the growth mindset. That's fine. But it's this. Resilience is it's the one trait the universities and employers are looking for. It's when your teen overcomes adversity and they overcome setbacks. And so, yes, as I teach it, the grades in the A-level maths and science class, they're going to be like the stock market, moving up and down towards the A star at the end. Okay. Some topics you may score very high on first time around. Maybe there's a dip in the grade. Not a big deal because the grade is always moving up over the course of time. But what does your teen do if they get a bad grade, a bad test result, a bad exam mark, a bad lab report grade, whatever? This is when resilience comes in. And if they can get up and if they can dust themselves off, maybe take a night off because they got a bad test grade, whatever, next day they're back at it, well, then this shows resilience, which is something that universities and employers are looking for. But also curiosity. Curiosity is another one of these intrinsic values that we all have. If your teen is curious about studying A-level chemistry, like they want to go beyond what's in the textbook, or if they're into biology and they want to learn more about medicine, whatever, do the doctor for a day program, fantastic. Reward, praise their curiosity. Now, something else you can do to help shift your teen from comparison to growth is limit comparison triggers. Because like I said, your teen grew up with social media, which means that they used to having a phone, they used to having a laptop, an iPad, and they used to having social media bombard them with comparisons and adverts all the time. It's just part of the modern day world. But parents, you can put some digital boundaries on it. So I'm not saying that you take away the phone. Some parents do. When the teen is studying, they have this agreement with their teen that they're going to leave the phone on the kitchen table. But other parents sit down and have a conversation with the teen and say, you know what, let's only be on social media for, say, 30 minutes, an hour today, okay? And let's avoid the highlight reels of other student successes, and then compare it to your own life. So, for example, you may say, you know what, I don't bother looking at the highlight reels of famous actors and actresses and billionaire businessmen and businesswomen, and I don't look at the local social media group that I'm in if they're posting a really fantastic holiday that they went on or something else, because what it makes me do is compare myself to others. You practice what you preach, and I'm internally driven. I'm not extrinsically driven. Because the problem with your teen looking at highlight reels is again, it goes back to the comparison trap, and they fuel anxiety, not achievement. Now, the next thing you can do is this. The next thing you can do is that you can help reinforce their identity. And this probably has to be the biggest thing that we talk about at Empowered STEM, is you got to reinforce their identity. Because if your teen has the identity of an A-star student, then the beliefs and the behaviors and the values support it. So how we teach it is, here's the vision. You being a a medical doctor because you want to do plastic surgery for people in the third world with cleft palates. This is your vision. And so your mission then is that you're going to set up an organization or join an organization when you get out of medical school. Fantastic. And so your identity is one of a doctor. Right. And then below that, you've got the values and the beliefs and the behaviors of what exactly a doctor would do. Well, you can do the same idea with that, with your teen being an A-level student. You can say, right, and so to be a doctor, to get into the university, you need these grades. So you need to have the identity of an A-level student who would get the A or the A star. And at Empowered STEM, what we do is that we rewire the way that your teen thinks about it, because perspective is key. And the perspective your teen needs to understand is this, is that they're not falling behind, they're on their own path. Because a lot of teens that come onto our courses, they believe that because they come in with a B, a C, or a D, they're falling behind because they're comparing themselves to their friends who have an A or an A star, and they're trying to get onto their path. What we get them to understand is, no, what you need to do is be on your path, follow your path to your chosen grade. Now, we also point out, well, you know what? Every top performer out there once struggled as well. It doesn't matter if you want to use the example of an actor, an actress, an athlete, a businessman. It doesn't matter. They all struggled at one time on their life when they were walking the path to where they are now. So, is it a story behind this? Well, of course there is. The one that comes to mind is Ishan. Now, Ishan, when he came to us, Ishan, a bright young man, he had a B. He came in with the B. He was on our course. And his issue was he was always comparing himself to others. Well, yeah, well, Graham, you see, look, at school, well, my friend got an A star on this. He got an A straight off the bat. Why can't he do his homework faster than I can do it? He's not up all night studying. I am. Why? And so what we had to do then is we had to rewire the way that he thinks and help him see that he needs to be on his path towards success, not his friend's path towards success. And the way that we did it is, besides the academic coaching element, we helped him focus on the diagnostic feedback and measure the internal progress that he was making. And so we refocused everything. We took the optics, we refocused it. And so when he got the feedback from the course tutor, he was able to look at it with a critical lens and go, right, this is what I need to work on next in order to be successful, in order to start climbing the grades, the grade ladder, as we call it. And when he did that, as soon as he started focusing on what he needed to do, and he was on his path, and he wasn't comparing himself to his friends, he was internally driven and motivated towards success. He moved from a B up to the A, and then he got a place at UCL, and now he's studying medicine. Now, parents, the reason why I say this is because, again, it sounds just like your teen, doesn't it? If you're with me with this live stream, you're thinking it sounds just like your teen. What we've talked about today, I bet there's quite a few comparisons to your teen. You're nodding your head going, that's true. Because the reason is, parents, is your role in your teen's academic success is vital. And you have a really, really strong voice in your teen success. Although they're your teens, they still look up to you. They still want to please you. They still want to make you proud of them, okay? And we've got to be careful with that bit, because what we need to do then is we need to make sure, parents, that you don't fall into the comparison trap. Okay. And so what you've got to do is you've got to redirect your comparison, your instinct, your desire to compare your teen to others. All right. And unfortunately put your teen into the comparison trap, and you need to help them focus on what they need to do in order to be successful in their journey. Because how I think about it is this: success isn't about being ahead, it's about moving forward. Okay. Success isn't about being ahead of everybody else in the class. Success is about moving forward. You moving forward along the journey your teen needs to be on to the A and the A star. What it comes down to, parents, is it comes down to the type of questions that you ask your teen. Okay, so as a parent's role, you're always communicating with your teen, and you need to really possibly think about the questions that you ask. And so maybe you could say something like this. Maybe you could say, right, so what's the one thing that you improved this week? Well, Mum, Dad, what I did is I learned electrochemistry in A-level chemistry. Oh, good. Or if they didn't do so well on a test or a homework or an exam, you could say, right, what's the one thing that you're going to try differently next time? Because what you're doing is that you're helping them refocus the optics into the growth mindset. Because what we know at Empower STEM as parents is that students who achieve the A or the A star in A-level maths and A-level science, they aren't competing against others. What they're competing against is the previous version of themselves. And I think this is like the most important bit of this entire live stream is this bit. Look, students who achieve the A star, they aren't competing against others. They don't care how others are doing. If they did get an A star or an A or a B, fantastic. Good for them. They're happy for them because this is where they are on their journey. What they're doing is that they're comparing themselves against the previous version of themselves, the student that they were yesterday. And they're going back to that internal benchmark and the internal motivation and saying, what can I do to improve? How can I keep myself motivated? How can I keep myself in the zone of excellence, not stuck in the comparison trap? Now, parents, look, if what I say in these live streams, if it makes sense to you, if it resonates with you, if you go, well, actually, Graham, you're on the live stream on Facebook and YouTube every week. You're always giving us tips and techniques and strategies to help our teens be successful in A-level maths and A-level science. And you want to, you can, if you're watching this live stream on Facebook, you can subscribe to the Facebook business page, and then you'll be notified of upcoming live streams. Or if you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. And not only will you be notified of upcoming live streams, but you'll also be able to see all the other live streams that we've done. Now, parents, you may be interested in learning about the courses that I talk about in these live streams. And if you are, then it's really easy for you to do this. If you're on Facebook, click on the link in the description. If you're on YouTube, click on the link in the description below the video and at the platform. You fill out a simple form, and a member of my team will reach out to you today and have a simple non-sales conversation. It's a really easy conversation that we have with you. It's this. You tell us where your teen is academically, what grade they want to get, what university they want to go to, what they want to be on the outside. and we tell you about our courses. This is what we do at Empowered STEM. This is what we offer. And then we put together a blueprint. We show you how our courses can help your teen climb the ladder to the A or the A star in A-level maths and A-level science. And if it's a good fit, after you've had your questions answered, you feel well taken care of, if it's a good fit, you can make the informed decision of moving forward. Everybody take care, and I'll see you in the next one.